Okay, I understand that we can continue. Let's go. So we solved the problem of the caching. We know that we need to use this static by ourselves. Still, we will have something in Spring 6 or 7. And let's continue to the next problem. For now, we send in the Raven, but where to we send in the Raven? We don't have any destination and Raven can crash. So the next thing we need to do is several things. First of all, we need additional condition that Raven will fly only in case when somebody will tell him where. Okay, so again, let's separate it. We have starter project and we have the real project. Who will decide where Raven should fly? Starter or project who uses the starter? Project who uses the starter, right? Okay, where usually we regular that we can provide some information for the beans configuration of the starter inside which file? Application properties or application YAML, okay? So we need to do several things. First of all, we need to think about some Raven.destination property which should be provided in any project who want to use our starter. This is the first thing. The second thing, in case this property is not provided, Raven should not fly, so these beans should not be created, which sends the Ravens. And the third thing, we want after completion. Because every time when you go to your application property file, for example, application properties, I want to change the port. Yes, I can write server.port, server address. I want to change something related to the data source. I have a lot of properties which I can provide, and the starter configuration will take care about these properties, but I have an after completion. So how can we do all these things, including the after completion? Let's do it. So first thing, we need to go to our starter, and we need to add the class which will, how we will call it, Raven properties, or our starter properties, no matter. Raven props. Okay, now, what kind of properties we want here? We want the property called, it will be string, it will be destination, right? Now, I'm using Lombok. I don't want to write getters and setters, so I will use a data. And in order to say that this class actually will be the capture of the properties which will come from the real project, from the application YAML or properties, I should mark it with a notation called configuration properties. Okay? And here I will provide some prefix of properties of my starter. So prefix will be Raven, for example. Okay, so it will be Raven.destination. And now after I did that, you see, this is a red line, and IntelliJ says me, Spring boot configuration annotation processor not found in the class path. So let's try to understand how IntelliJ knows to complete the properties which starters are looking for. And then we will do the same. So actually, we have files, JSON files. It's called additional Spring configuration metadata.json. And this file describes what properties can be after completed. So we have two options. Option number one, we can write this file by ourselves, put it in somewhere in resources in the jar of our starter, and then IntelliJ will find it and will make the after completion. Another option, we can add this dependency, and this dependency will generate automatically this JSON file regarding all classes marked with configuration properties annotation, and we'll use all the fields like a suffix, and then prefix is written inside the annotation configuration properties. Okay, I can show you that this file, additional Spring configuration metadata.json, we have a lot of them. If we'll go to our real project, Iron Bank Riga, additional, you see? So this how this files looks like. It's the name of the property, the type of the property, the default value of the property, and more things can be here. Okay, so what IntelliJ suggests us to do, he says open the documentation, and we click here, and then he says add please to your POM XML this dependency in order to receive the annotation processor. What is annotation processor? Since Java 6, we have an option to develop annotation processor. It's not regular jars. These jars are says about themselves that they are annotation processors with some manifest file and implementing some interfaces. And when compiler sees that he is not alone, but there is annotation processors inside the class path, he let them work. Okay, for example, Lombok is annotation processor. He generates the bytecode in the compile phase. This one is also an annotation processor, and he will generate the JSON file, which will be used by IntelliJ in order to make after completion for the properties of our starter. So I'm just taking this block of dependencies to my POM of my starter. Okay, this is the thing I need to do here. Okay, now IntelliJ is quiet. And the next thing I should do, you see, we have a red line here. IntelliJ is very smart. He says that this class is not registered yet. In order to register this class, in order it will automatically receive all the properties from application YAML of the real project, we need to use enable configuration properties annotation in the configuration of our starter and mark the class which are container of these properties. So let's go to the starter conf. And let's use this enable configuration properties. And here we'll say Raven props. So how did we call it? Raven props.class. Now IntelliJ will be quiet. Now he will be quiet. Okay, if I'll do Maven install even now, what changed? I'm sorry. Maven install. Why I'm doing the Maven install? Because I want to receive after completion even inside the starter. Now you will see where it will happen. And I need to go to my Raven sender application listener, and I want to use these properties, right? I need to inject, okay? So let's use here, I don't care about field injection. Acquire private Raven properties, Raven props. And we need to send, Raven was sent to semicolon and Raven props.getDestination. Okay? Now, we talked about that I want that this bin will be created only in case this property exists in the real project. So I go to the declaration of this bin, to my configuration again, and I want to say this is not only condition to create this bin. Additional condition that we need this bin is the property Raven.destination exists. So I can use existing conditional annotation. It's called condition on property. And condition on property can take from me the name of the property, which is must that this bin will be created. So Raven, and you see, I have it after completion already now, because I already did Maven install, and this JSON file was already generated. So this is our condition. Let's make Maven install again in order to, my change will take, no, where is my Maven? No, here it is. Maven install. And now if we'll go back to the real project and we will restart it again, stop and rerun. Where is the question about the production? I missed it because I lost the focus of the pop-up again. You see, this question is asked yet, yes. But the property Raven.destination doesn't exist. Because of this, you see, Raven was not sent. If we'll go to the application properties, you see we have the after completion because the JSON file exists in the starter jar. And I can say Dorn, for example. This is our destination. Let's run it again. Production, yes. Raven was sent to Dorn. You see this? So it's super simple. Next task. Before this. So this is existing conditional annotation you already can use. So you have conditional on bin, conditional on class, conditional on cloud platform, and there are much more. And you saw that it's very simple to develop your own conditional annotations to make the smart configurations. Why they did this and how it can be used. For example, you using starter GPA. Starter GPA bring his own configuration with a lot of bins from there. For example, the Hibernate bins, like data source and like entity manager factory, and most of them with a lot of conditions. In case I want to provide some information for part of these bins, I can use application YAML application properties, and I can say that my username for my database is not root like it by default if I will not provide this, but it's Jeka, and the password is 1234, and many other information I can provide. But in case I don't want that, for example, I love the GPA starter. It brings me a lot of beans, but data source I want to do by myself because maybe it's too complicated. I cannot just use the application properties to provide information because this information is with conditions, additional conditions, kind of ifs inside. I want to declare this bean by myself. In most of the cases, you will be able to do that only by that you will declare the same bean in your project. And then the starter will not provide the same bean for you because the original bean of the starter declared with conditional on bean annotation. It means if the same bean already exists in the real project, this bean will not be created. So it's very flexible. Okay? I want to ask you something. I want to ask you some kind of puzzler. We have this config, okay? Execution config. We want to kill the people. And we have a lot of options how we're going to kill them. So we have the gallows. Conditional that gallows bean will be created, it's several conditions. First of all, it's condition on class. In case soap.class exists and rope.class exists, and in case there is no bean, other bean called execution factory, this execution factory will be created. In addition, we have another bean called electric chairs. Okay, what is condition for electricity chairs? The chair exists and electricity exists, and there is no other bean called execution factory. We will create chairs. And the last one is guillotine. What do we need to create in the guillotine in case we have the guillotine and good mood, and we don't have any other factor which is execution factory? We'll create the guillotine. Bzig, bzig. Now I have a question. What actually will happen? You can see that a lot of red classes here. What will happen? We will receive class definition not found. We will try to use this configuration in our project, or it will not compile maybe, or it will work, or it will work perfectly. What do you think? What's the correct answer? Yes, the answer number 3. It will not perfectly, but it will work. So first of all, how this class can be compiled. So when maybe I can show you some real configuration. Let's go to our project. Let's open some Spring factories of the main jar, which is Spring Boot after configure. Remember this one where we have something like 90 or 100 configuration, and we'll open Rabbit after configuration. You see Rabbit and configuration. Let's download the sources. I hope the internet is working good here. Yet? Yes. And you see, we have here conditional on class, Rabbit template and channel. In case these classes are not exist in the class path, this configuration will not be, it will be scanned, but it will not be loaded, okay, because it's a conditions. But it is red. These classes are not in the class path. So how it was compiled? When they compile in such a configuration, for sure they have in class path only the classes. But these dependencies is provided dependencies. And when it depends on this starter, we just receiving the compiled code of the starter without his dependency, without RabbitMQ. Okay? It's just compiled code. So it's already compiled code, so no compilation error can happen. But in case you will try with reflection to scan the annotation of, for example, method gallows, let me give you an example. You're familiar with the reflection, right? I'm with reflection trying to understand what are the annotations which is provided above method gallows. And I'm using something like method.is annotation present bin.class. I just want to check if there is a bin annotation. What will happen? Runtime exception will happen. Why? Because do you remember that annotations in Java was not developed from the beginning? It's only since Java 5. And when class loader loads a bytecode, loads a class, it does not load immediately all the metadata, all the annotations. Only when you will apply to get annotations, so is annotation present, only then class loader will try to bring all the metadata of your annotations. And in case one of the annotations points to the class which not exists in the class path, and class loader will try to load him, in the same moment it will fail. So the question, how it is working? Because it is working. But it's not working good, it's working slowly because of the ASM. Spring try to use reflection till they can. But in case reflection fails, they take the bytecode instrumentation, the ASM goes inside the bytecode, and then they try to take that information that way. Because of that, Jorgen Holler says that every time when you use annotations like condition on class, or you develop your own annotation, try to use strings, but not the classes in case you want the best performance. But it will work anyway. Okay, another thing. Sometimes we have a starter, but we want to disable part of his abilities. For now, it sounds stupid because the only ability of our starter is just to say the Raven. So why I need to turn off or turn on this ability? It sounds stupid because I just can, if I don't need to send the Raven, why I need the starter? But let's think that our starter do much more things than sending a Raven. And to send a Raven, I want to disable only this one. I want to disable. How can I do that? We already know that we have an annotation called conditional on property. We already use it. But we have a little problem here in case we want to use more than one annotation like this. We already have this condition in our starter. Let me show you it again. You see, we already use conditional on property. And for example, I want conditional on several properties. I want to create this bin in case we have property Raven destination. And in addition, I want that this bin will be created only in case when property Raven.disabled is true. Okay, how can I do such a thing? So, like you can see here, the conditional on property has several values. We have the value, which is array. So it can be several values. I can provide several values because I may depend on several values. We have the prefix, we have the name, and we have the having value. And the problem is that the having value is not an array. I cannot say that my condition that this property exists and this property not exists, and this property should have this specific value, and all this is my condition. I cannot do this because if I'll try, I have only one having value. So this having value true will be for all these properties. Okay? It's not a list. From the other hand, annotation conditional on property cannot be used several times because it's not repeatable. So how can I solve this if I want several conditions on different properties? Let's talk about it. We can extend all nested conditions if we want the AND behavior, or we can use any nested conditions if we want OR behavior. This is an example how it can be done. You can develop your own annotation called conditional on Raven, and this annotation will point to the composite condition class. And the composite condition class will look like this. You see, I have here on Raven condition which extends from all nested conditions. Here I have two static classes, just a semantics because this is Java. You need to do something inside your class or methods or classes that decided it should be done by classes. So we have one class which called on Raven property. And here we specify that the condition is Raven destination property should exist, and the value of this property should be false, for example. And another static class we have here, we have the property named Raven enable, and it should have value true. And in case, I can also provide information what should be done if this property is not exist at all. Okay, so all this class is composition which should be used in my annotation conditional on Raven. You see, conditional on Raven points to composite condition. This is a composite condition. And finally, I can use this annotation on conditional on Raven. And conditional on Raven has inside two static class with different metadata. And this is how can you do that. Okay, now, who is already finished to see the Game of Thrones? Who loved the end? Yeah, because I didn't see the last season. I'm waiting. I don't know for what, but I'm still waiting. Okay, but you know, but I finished the 7th season and I know that the wall was breaking. And when the wall was breaking, the policy of the Iron Bank should change. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about winter is here. Till season 8, it was winter is coming, and now winter is here. When winter is here, Iron Bank changed the rules of who will receive the loan and who will not receive the loan. Remember the previous logic? If you are not Stark, you will receive the loan because Stark will be killed in the winter. If you are not Stark, you will receive the loan. But when winter is already here, we should change the policy. Okay? So let's add additional implementation of our profit service, or our, how did I call it? Prediction service. Prediction service. I have another implementation. Let's call it prediction service on in winter, or winter prediction service. Okay, we should use this. Any filial of Iron Bank which located where the winter already came should use this implementation. And the solve filials of Iron Bank still should continue with the previous one. And they should switch to the new implementation only when the winter will came. So what will be the logic here? I think it will be very simple. Name to lowercase, contains Lannister. Okay, this is the logic. Because if you Lannister, you always pay debts, no matter if it's winter is here, winter is coming. So only these people will receive a loan in case they apply to the filial of the bank where winter is already here. Okay, so let's mark it with service annotation, and let's try to rerun it again. What will happen? What will happen now? It will fail, right? Why it will fail? Because you have two bins, exactly. We need to inject to our controller. Where is our controller, our bank controller? We want to inject the prediction service. By the way, if I was using field injection, or my constructor was here, the IntelliJ would say to me the same thing what I can see in my exception. That what do you anticipate for? You want the injection of prediction service, but you have two options. So what will be injected? Okay, so we need to use it by some profile. I want to say that this bin should be created in case the profile is winter is here. Okay, so this is a profile. I will write here winter is here. This is the name of the profile. And the second bin, which is the regular implementation, is by other profile. Oops. No, what happened? Winter prediction service regular. Here is will be profile winter is coming. Right? When I will run this, what will happen? It will fail. Why it will fail? There is no bin. Because when I'm running my application, I forgot to say what is my profile, what is my active profile. And if I'm not providing the information about the active profile, not this bin, neither second bin will not be created, and there is nothing to inject to our REST controller. Okay? But the question, and it's okay that it's failed, but it's not okay that we're waiting so long. Because when we running this, it started to run, maybe it's doing a lot of things which should not be done because this project is not correct. I should provide information, is production or not production, but will fail. So we have the new law in our Iron Bank. We need fast fail without profile. Every time when somebody will try to run Iron Bank application, the starter will enforce to fail this application immediately in the beginning after checking that the one who running this application forgot to configure the profile. Okay? So let's go back to the starter and let's enter this rule. Who will help us? First of all, let's try to think what kind of component we should develop. Should it be bin post-processor? We want fast fail. So we need some Spring component which will work totally in the beginning of our startup process, of our bootstrap process. Okay, and we have this one. It's called application context initializer. Application context initializer, it's not a bin of the Spring. Okay, it's not a bin of the Spring. It's just one of the internal components, and any application context initializer will work in the beginning, in the moment when context already exists, but there is nothing inside the context. Even bin post-processor is not created. The only thing which exists inside the context when application context initializer is working is the environment object. What is environment object? Environment object will be built by Spring application even before the context will be built, and all the properties will be grabbed inside it. The system properties, environment properties, application properties, the information about profiles, all this stuff is inside environment object. And the environment object is built before the context. And when the context is built, the first thing which will be provided to the context is the environment object. And the application context initializer is working in that moment. So I'm going back to my starter, and I need to create a class. How can we call it? Profile Sentinel. Do you remember Sentinel? There is a song. Sentinel. Sentinel, profile Sentinel, application, context, initialize. Don't you familiar with Judas Priest? It's like Iron Maiden, but a little bit different. Sentinel. They have the song Sentinel, perfect song. It's a kind of guard. And I need to implement application context initializer interface. It will enforce me to implement the method called initialize. Here we have the context, but as I told you, inside this context there is nothing except from environment object. But I can check what is inside the environment. I will do something like if context dot give me your environment, give me the information about the active profiles. Get active profiles is just the array of strings, because the name of the profiles is just a strings. Because it's array, I will use the length property, and I want to check if it's 0. In case there is no active profiles, we want to fail immediately without continue. So I will throw some illegal state exception. I will say can't work without profile. Now, what should I do in order that this profile Sentinel application context initializer will be part of our starter? How can I declare him? Should I go to the starter config and declare additional bin of this profile Sentinel context something long, right? Initializer. So, should I do this? Will it work? Do you understand why? Because, as I told you, it's not a bin, and the bin creation phase is much, much later. We are talking about the moment when we have an empty context with nothing except of environment object. So I should find some other way to register my application context initializer, not by doing this, declaring this as a bin. Where I will go? Where will I go? No, it's the same Spring Factories. As I told you, the Spring Factories is a file which helps to the starter describe himself. And a lot of Spring Boot mechanism extract from here different information. The donkey, remember the donkey? Which is import selector. He scanned these files and looking for property called enable after configuration in order to find all the configurations. But it is not only the mechanism which scans the Spring Factory files. Another mechanism searching for property called application context initializer and give them work in the beginning. So I need to declare my context initializer here, application context initializer. This is the name of the property. You see the very simple convention. The name of the property is the name of the interface. And the value of the property is the name of the class or several classes if you have many, which are implement this interface. And the name was profile, Sentinel, and something long. No? What was the name? Profile, Sentinel, application, context initializer. Okay, this one. Now I can build my starter and can check out that I will fail fast. Maven, install. Okay, build successful. We can go back to our main project. And now I will run, it will fail, but it should fail immediately without asking me production, not production, without any process, it will be started. Let's see. Boom. Can't work without profiles. Okay? Now, in case I will provide information about profile, how can I do that? I can go to the environment variables or command line properties, but you believe that it will work, right? There is no need to do it. I will do something more interesting. The next law, we want to write some profile after detection. Okay? We want to write some mechanism because this guy says to us, look, you develop for us our backend application, but we use this application in many different filials. And one day when we start another application, the filial can be in the line where winter is not already came, and this profile should be activated. But in the moment when the same filial will be in the line where after the winter is came, different profiles should be activated. Our developers, it's not developers, we just, we have the clerks in Iron Bank, we just know to run your application. Maximum we can do, we can restart it. This is a maximum. We don't know how to provide information about profile. We want that your mechanism will detect the profile automatically according to the temperature, for example. If it's too cold, it's winter is here profile. If it's not too cold, winter is coming profile. Okay, let's try to do this. In order to do this, we need to know about additional component called environment postprocessor. Okay, environment postprocessor is something which works even before application context initializer. This one working in the moment when environment is built, but before context even started. In case we want to fulfill the environment with additional properties. Do you familiar with Spring Cloud? Spring Cloud, somebody? Okay, in Spring Cloud we have the config server, for example. And config server can provide a lot of properties which concentrated in some other place, for example, in your Git. And still these properties will be in environment of your application in case it's working against the config server. How they did that? They're using the same environment postprocessors. And our environment processor will not bring something to the environment. It will just check that environment. I'm sure, no, I'm not correct. It will, after detect what is the profile. So let's go back to our starter. Here it is. And let's create additional class called after profile detection environment processor, something like this. Profile after detector environment post. This is the most complicated part to write this without mistakes. Processor. Okay. I succeeded. Okay. Never economize the length of your name of the infrastructure class. It can have a lot of problems if you do that. Implement environment postprocessor. Environment postprocessor. And the method I should implement called postprocess environment. And as you can see here, I have the environment object here and the Spring application. Remember the Spring application? The one who started all the process? It means when Spring application is delegating to the environment postprocessor, he's providing the environment which was already built and himself. In order you need to take something from there, but usually not. What I want to do, first of all, I want to check that I don't have any active profile till now. So it will be if environment, again, get active profile /0. I will try to add the profile by myself. How will I do that? I will say if get temperature. Okay, get temperature is the method which will return some integer, which will be the temperature, okay? And I'll say if it's less than -50 degrees, it's winter is here, okay? So I need to set the profile to winter is here. So environment, you have two options how you can set the profile. You have the set active profiles, or you can use add active profiles. I believe you understand the difference. Add active profiles will not override the profiles which were configured before, for example, in the property file or in some environment variables. And set active profiles will override the existing profiles. In my case, I don't care because there is no profiles at all. Okay, so I can use this or this, no matter. And I will say that profile is winter is here. I hope for you that you working with constants, not like me. And else, I need to set the active profiles to winter is coming. I hope I didn't make some spelling mistakes. Otherwise, it will not work. Coming. Constants, guys, use constants. Okay, now, so this method is not implemented. It's just business logic to check the temperature. So kind of some mock for me. This method will return an integer. And for example, we'll say now it's minus 87. Okay, this is the most cold temperature. My grandfather told me he saw. He was in Antarctica and he saw minus 87. It's very cold. Now, what should I do in order that this profile will be, this environment post-processor will be part of our starter? It's easy to guess, right? Where I go? Environment, Spring factories. Again, the same thing. I will not declare it as a bean because it's totally not a bean. It works even before the context exists. So I want to describe who is the environment post-processor I want to use. And I will write a profile after detector and something long, this one. Okay, you see it's very easy to find your classes if they are long. And every time when you implementing some infrastructure interfaces of Spring, like bean post-processor, environment post-processor, application context initializer, and the name of the class is less than 30 letters, you're not serious. Okay, let's try to build it. Maybe install. So, if everything is correct, the profile after detector will configure the profile that winter is here because the temperature is minus 87. And that means that the strategy of the loan will be changed and only Lannister will be able to receive the money. So let's go back to the project. Let's restart it. You see, there is nothing to do in the project. This is a perfect thing. Just improve your starter. So we are in production, for example, but I don't care about the Raven. Now, you see, it didn't fail. It didn't fail. It means that profile was detected. Otherwise, the second one was failed, the application fast fail. And now we should go to my here. And you see, loan was accepted when Jon Snow received it. If now Jon Snow will try to go for the loan, it will be rejected because he will not survive the winter. Don't tell me the spoilers. I know that he was once killed, but I don't know what will happen in the end. And now, if we'll try some other name, for example, Therion. Tenor also was rejected. Why? Because he forgot to say that he's Lannister. Maybe he thinks he's not, but he's Lannister. And he will provide this information. Loan is accepted. You see? So it's very simple. Just because of the temperature, the different profile will be automatically detected. And because of the changing of the profile, different implementation of prediction service will be injected to our REST controller. And there is nothing to do for the guys who just managing the application of Iron Bank. They just time to time need to restart it in order that the profile will be activated again. Okay, so regarding the environment post-processor, in order to understand the flow, when they work and how, so demo where they saw, we need to talk about this guy. He called config file application listener. You see how it looks like? Because Spring doesn't care about single responsibility, and sometimes we can see classes in the Spring which implements two totally different interfaces. The mechanism of the Spring who gave the option to all environment post-processors to work called config file application listener. He listens for event that environment is starting to build, and then he finds out all environment post-processor, how he do this. Again, he's going via all Spring Factories files, finds out information about all environment post-processors, creates them, and let them work. But what is funny, that he's himself environment post-processor. So he's both listener and environment post-processor. So the first step, now we try to understand all the flow. When you're running Spring application.run, what's starting to happen? First of all, the Spring application is building environment. And this environment is not filled, it's just built. Then he will throw up an event. Actually, he's not him, it's another additional listener between this one and this one, but we can omit him because he do nothing. It's just another layer of abstraction, which actually not in use for now. So we can skip this intermediate layer. We can think that he is building environment and making the event that environment is empty environment is already built. And then he calls to his method that environment empty is built, provide himself and the environment. You remember that each environment post-processor receives these two things. And now it is his duty to fill the environment, okay? So because he has two faces, two faces. He is also listener and also environment post-processor. So as listener, he listens to these events, application prepared event and application environment prepared event. And as environment post-processor, he scans your application YAML, he scans your application properties, he takes all environment variables from the machine, he takes all command line arguments, and he put it in the environment. But except from this, he will find other environment post-processors and give them work, okay? So the same mechanism is used here. Everybody who want to scan something inside Spring Factories always using the Spring Factories loader. Okay, I told you this class was developed something like 8 years ago. Okay, so he will, if you'll try to see it's like a movie, he is saying to the Spring Factories, please bring me all environment post-processors. He will bring these environment post-processors to him. He will say, okay, I need to sort you. And because it can be ordering, each environment post-processor can be marked with ordered annotation if it's important the order for you. So he needs to sort them. And then he says, but you are looking like us. You also environment post-processor. And then he says, okay, wait for me. And all of them are going. All of them are configuring the environment. Okay? Okay, so this is the end of his activity. So he managing the environment post-processors, including himself. It's very funny lines of, if I'll show you the lines of the code, it's very simple. Spring Factories load is get environment post-processor, then he receiving the list, and then the next line, list.add this. He's adding himself to this list, and then he is iterating through the list and invoking the post-process environment method, which actually was implemented by us 5 minutes ago. Okay, regarding the events, if you're familiar with Spring context events, you maybe heard about these 4, because this is Spring events: context started event, context stopped event, context closed event, and context refreshed event. Context refreshed event, just a reminder, we already used today. The Raven listener actually listen for the context refresh. Context refresh is an event which happens only once. Usually context is not refreshable, so this event will be thrown when the context will be built, okay? And then we will send the Raven. But in Spring Boot, we have much more events than these 4. Okay, so we have the regular events for the simple people and complicated events for not simple people. Okay, this is Chuck Norris events, like application starting event, application environment prepared event. All these events you can listen only in case if your listener is not registered as a bean. If you create the class which implements application listener and you put add component on this class, or you declare it as a bean by different way with Java config, no matter, the events he can listen is only the babushka events. Okay, only the simple Spring events, context refresh, context started, context stop, and so on. Okay, if you want to listen events which came before this, before the context was created, you don't need to register your listener as a bean. You need to write it in Spring Factories again. Okay, and then you will listen to Chuck Norris event. Okay, regarding these 2 events, this is very interesting event. Do you familiar with them? Context started and context stopped event. What does it mean? Context started, context stopped. If you will try to listen them, it will be very interesting. Where you think this event happens? Should it happen context started after application event or after application environment prepared event? Where it will happen? So the answer is very simple. They never occurs. This event never occurs. Not context started, not context stopped. Okay? In order that they will occur, you need to invoke them by yourself. Remember that we have the context object, which will be created by a Spring application. Where is my main method? Here it is. Okay, so this one is our context. And in case we call method start, the start event will happen. And in case we have listener who's listen for this event, he will listen it. In case we'll call the stop method, the listener will be able to hear it. But by default, these events never happen. Nobody calls them. Okay, they just exist. This is how you should do it. Okay, and the last question regarding the events. What do you think will happen here? In which line we will receive an exception? Look, so I created the context, and then I'm calling context stop, and then I'm calling context start. Sounds strange, start after stop. And then I'm closing the context, and then again I'm calling the context start. Where the exception will happen? In which line? Who think it's line number 1? Line number 2? 2, it will not happen, start after stop. Number 3. Okay, and what is number 4? Who think it's number 4? And you are right, it will happen number 4. So it means you can call stop before start. It's okay because nobody cares about start and stop events. Close event will close the context. And after context was closed, no event can be thrown, even the event which nobody cares because it's already closed. Okay, and this is the whole line, all the fully life cycle. What's happening? We're trying to summarize what we have learned till now. So in the beginning, we have the starting event, and then we have the listener, which will invoke all the environment post-processors, and then environment post-processors are filling the event with a different data which can come from different sources. And then context is created, but it is empty. Just inside the context, there is an environment object. And the next step, all application context initializers are working, and they can do something with the context. And the next step, context is refreshed. And from here, you just can open my talk called Spring the Reaper and look what happens next. Okay? I will send to the organizer of the configuration both Russian version and English version of this talk, that you will be able to see if you are interested what's going on there. What about the bean post-processors and bean factory post-processor? It's a lot of stuff, how the bean will be configured, okay? But Spring Boot adds all this, okay? From the green light, this is a regular Spring. Before this, it's Spring Boot. The last thing we should talk about how we launch our application. And we have several options. We can launch in the Tomcat. We can build a war like we worked before. By the way, who is using till now? He was working with Spring Boot, but still using his homemade Tomcat and making the war files, copy-pasting into the web apps directory. Who is doing this? Only 1 person, 2 person, 2 person. Who is using WebLogic with Spring Boot? You can do that. Maybe JBoss. JBoss is better than WebLogic. WebSphere is the worst, right? Okay, but you can do that also. Okay, but we will not talk about it. We will talk about how to run it from the war, what the difference from running with IntelliJ, and how we run it with Java -jar from the command line like we love. As I already mentioned in the previous session, that in our POM XML file, or in the build Gradle script, no matter, we have this plugin, Spring Boot Maven plugin. By default, Maven build a jar, a regular Java jar, without any content inside except from the compiled classes of our project. Okay, it will not be the dependencies inside. This is a regular jar. This plugin, Spring Boot Maven plugin, builds different jar. Let's try to see how this jar looks like. Does anybody familiar with this building? It's near the Kiev. It's how this place is called. Does anybody know how the place is called? Pirogova. And I looked at this church, and I see the door is opened, and many people coming from there, and they come in, and they not stop and say, "Wow, but it's very small. Where the people were contained? Maybe it's something under the floor." And then I tried to look from the side, and I see, wow, it's a very big building. The same with the jar which was built by Spring Boot plugin. It looks like a regular jar, but if you try to look about the size of this file, let's try to see the size of this file. If I'm going back to my application, how can I open in Explorer or something like this? Where it is? Open, show in Explorer. Okay. And if you go to the target directory, I still didn't install this jar even once. So let's run here maybe and install. First of all, I need to delete the tests. Otherwise, it can fail. You know why? Because when you receive this template, you remember I did not create this project. I asked from IntelliJ to generate something which was taken from Start Spring IO site, and there is a test there which testing all the application, and if I will not fix it, it will fail. So I'll just delete it. Now I want to go to the maven, and I want to run. Never do that. You need to write the test. Test is good. Okay, now I can see in my target directory, and now the jar will be created here. Oh, some errors. But I deleted the tests. What other problem can be? Run bank. There are tests, but I deleted all the. Okay, another option. Here is another option. I can skip the test. Now let's try to maybe install it. Okay. Yes. And now we can find out that we have two jars here. You see, this is the small jar which marked by .original, and it's only 6 kilobyte. What is that? This is the real jar of my project. But in addition, this Spring Boot Maven plugin, or Gradle plugin, or whatever, he's building additional jar which size is 18 kilobytes. And if I was adding some additional starters like Starter JPA and Starter REST and Mongo and Cassandra and many others, the size can be several hundreds of megabytes because all the dependencies included there. Okay. If we will open the original jar, let's open the original jar and let's see, because I'm not sure that everybody from you remember exactly what is the content of the regular Java jar. You know, Java jar is actually it's 7-zip archive. So we can just open it with WinZip even. And if you will look here, we will see that we have the meta-inf directory. What happened? Yes, this is the way how I worked 10 years ago when I need to change something in the class. So I just compile the class and I just open the jar and change to a different class and hot redeployment, something like this. So I'm familiar with the tricks. So in the regular jar, you have the meta-inf directory, which includes the manifest file. We'll talk about the manifest file a little bit later. And in addition, we have all our sources. Actually, it's not sources, it's already compiled classes, but they just thrown here in the root. Okay? This is how regular Java jar should look like. And when you run in Java-jar, what actually happens? What will be the class path when you run in Java-jar without minus class path and providing the information about the class path? Your class path will be just the content of the jar, just the classes we have here, and maybe RTjar, which is standard Java libraries. Okay, there is no any dependencies here. We should provide the class path. So this is the first thing. And if we will try to compare it with jar, which was built by Spring Boot, we will see that we have here, again, we have the meta-inf directory, because if we will not have it, it's not valid jar. And we have the manifest file inside. And in addition, we have some bootinf directory, but nobody cares. I'm talking about Java. Java, don't familiar with Spring Boot organization, don't familiar with how the content of the Spring Boot jar looks like. And from point of view of regular Java, bootinf doesn't exist at all. From the point of view of regular Java, there is only two things here like it should be. The manifest file inside meta-inf directory and some compiled classes inside the root. You see org, Spring Framework, boot. If I will try to open it and we'll see what is inside this, let's go back to our, I already closed this. Why I closed this? How it told me? Open, show in Explorer. And let's go back to the target. And let's open it again. But open now the fat jar, the jar which is 18 megabytes. Open with archive. And you see here, this is just compiled classes here, just compiled classes, and we can see there is a jar launcher here. You see, we have a var launcher and the jar launcher. these classes are in the root of this jar. And from the point of view of regular Java, only these classes exist in the class path, only them. Okay? I already closed it. No matter. So if you will try to look for the jar launcher class, you will not find it because you don't need this class in the compile time. And now let's try to understand what is written in this manifest file. In this manifest, we have two kinds of jars. The first type of the jar is just a jar, and the second one is executable. I mean executable not by double clicking and it will work, but I mean that it has a main which can be executed, right? So in order to provide an information to the Java, what is your class which contains the main which should be executed, you can do it in your manifest, and then you will write main class, and then you will provide an information. And as you can see here, the main class is jar launcher. It's not our class. It's not our main. Okay, why? Because if we'll write main class and we'll provide information about our main class, who will create the class path? And it will fail on the first import. So what is the duty of jar launcher? The duty of the jar launcher is to run our main, but before this, he should build the class path. How he builds the class path? He is going to the bootinf directory, he is going inside the libs, and if we will open what is inside the libs directory, we'll find all our dependencies is there. Okay, again, I'm opening the fat jar. Why I closed it? I don't understand. Okay, and here is bootinf, and here is the lib, and inside the lib we have all jars, including embedded Tomcat, and so on and so on, including all the dependencies and the transitive dependency. It's like a regular war file. Okay, so the duty of the jar launcher is just to invoke our main after the class path was generated, and all these jars will be included to the class path. Okay. And how does the Spring Boot jar launcher knows what is our main? There is additional property start class. The property start class inside manifest means nothing to Java. When you write in Java -jar, nobody takes care about start class, just Java looking for the main class parameter. But jar launcher looks for the start class, and that's how he knows which main should be invoked. Now the question is, how does, first of all, who is creating this manifest file, and how this one knows that our main class is our main class? Okay, how it's done? Who is writing the manifest? It's the same Spring Boot Maven plugin, and we can help to this plugin. We can explain that the main class, you see, there is a block of configuration. By the way, it's a mistake here. The main class should be inside the configuration block. You know how Maven works. Maven plugins has a configuration block, and inside there is a parameter, so it's a mistake. Main class should be inside the configuration, and we can provide information about the main class. But even if we will do, usually you are not doing this, because Spring Boot Maven plugin knows to guess it by himself. How it's working? Very simple. If there is only one main method, okay, so it will be written as a start class. If there is more than one main method, the one who annotated by Spring Boot application will be chosen, and he will be written as a start class. In case we have several mains with Spring Boot application, in this case it will fail, and will say, okay, I have more than one candidate, please provide me an information with the parameter called main class. Who is your start class? It's very funny, because the parameter called main class, but it will be the start class, because main class always is jar launcher. Or war launcher in case you want to build a war, because Spring Boot don't care. In case you want to support both mods, and you want to run your jar from command line, and in addition you want to put them in your Tomcat, you still need to build a war. Okay, but you saw that except from jar launcher, there is a war launcher. It's a little bit different class path will be there, but more or less it's the same idea. And the last thing, these guys, it's too complicated for them to write Java -jar. They want the executable jar, means like click and work. Okay, how can we help them? Another property, you see, it's a configuration block. The main classes also should be there. So we can provide in the configuration block of this plugin information executable true or false. By default, it's false. But if you write an executable true, this jar be executable from the point of view of operation system. You just can double click if you are in Windows or enter, and this application will start running. And the last thing I want to explain how actually this jar is built in case it's executable from the point of view of operation system. This is how this jar, when it is executable, looks like. Maybe it will sound funny, but we already know that Java archive, jar or var, or no matter what, is 7-zip archive. And if you will open any zip archive, you can just add any information, you can just write any text above, you can provide some script, and then you will save, and this jar or zip or var will not be corrupted. When I knew this, I said, how many information I can take to the home, can steal from my work. For example, I have a lot of passwords and so on, but the only thing my manager give me to take out is just jar files. So I can take jar files, open it, and put some scripts or some passwords or some pictures, and then save it and take it home. And what you take it home is just jar files, and it's okay. And let's check that jar files are working, and they're working. Okay, because how 7-zip archive is working, he ignores all that is written above because he has a mark where from the real archive is starting. Okay, so actually it's a huge script there above, and this script is checking what is your operation system. It's kind of bash. Okay, and then he will just run in finally Java minus Java. Okay, so we almost finished. Several advices. I just want to say that so Spring Boot is not a magic. Spring Boot is a big world, and it's very simple to work with that. But if you want to be able to solve the problems and you want to be able to customize it and use it correctly, you need to know the internals. And because we love the microservice architecture, does anybody here hate microservice architecture like me? No? Yeah, it's okay. We should love it because this is how the world is working today. The world of the Spring Boot together with starters can really help you. You can think about a lot of laws, a lot of common things for any microservice that your organization is using. You create in one starter, second starter, and you just say to the people, if you want this infrastructure will be part of your project, just put dependency to my starter and it will happen automatically. Thank you, guys.